One night at a five-star hotel in Manhattan, the moment a billionaire was surrounded by 5 armed men, a black cleaning lady sprang into action. In less than a minute she took them all down, right there on the marble floor. The footage spread like wildfire overnight. But what the cameras couldn't capture was that her real battle had only just begun. Before we dive deeper into this story, let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. The night sky over Manhattan was a sheet of cold glass. Rain traced silver veins down the windows of Empire Tower, the 60-story monument to money and ambition that dominated the skyline. Inside, the marble lobby glowed like the interior of a cathedral, polished, silent, expensive. Executives in $1,000 suits drifted through security gates, their shoes clicking like metronomes of power. But in the far corner, invisible to all of them, Naomi Reed pushed a gray janitor's cart across the floor. Her uniform was simple: navy blue shirt, white name tag, rubber-soled shoes that squeaked softly on marble. No one met her eyes, no one ever did. To them she was background noise, the woman who emptied trash cans, refilled paper towels, and disappeared before dawn. At 8:41 p.m., the glass doors hissed open. A convoy of black SUVs slid up to the curb like sharks closing in. 5 men stepped out, impeccably dressed, movements precise. They didn't look like tourists, they looked like predators who had memorized the anatomy of fear. Naomi's instincts pricked. Years of training buried under years of silence stirred awake in her bloodstream. The tallest man led the pack. Victor Havel, Eastern European features, shaved head, eyes like ice chips, the kind of man who never smiled because control was the only emotion he allowed himself. He scanned the lobby once, marking exits, security cameras, guards. Then his gaze landed on her. For a second, Naomi's hand tightened on the mop handle. "Keep moving," she whispered to herself. "Just keep moving." Across the lobby, Ethan Caldwell, billionaire founder of Neurodyne Technologies, stood checking his phone beside the elevator bank. The glow from the screen painted his face pale blue. He was here for a private dinner meeting on the top floor, supposedly with foreign investors interested in his quantum encryption system. He didn't know that every man who just walked in carried a weapon under his tailored jacket. Victor moved first. His voice was calm, almost polite. "Mr. Caldwell," he called, and as Ethan looked up, the silenced pistol appeared in Victor's hand like a conjured shadow. "Tonight you die." Time slowed. The security guard by the front desk didn't even have a chance to reach for his radio. The air smelled faintly of ozone and polished steel. Naomi froze beside her cart, her brain dividing into 2 halves, the civilian half screaming "run," and the soldier half whispering "assess, plan, execute." Victor stepped closer, muzzle aimed at Ethan's forehead. "Step away from the elevator. No sudden moves." Ethan's voice came out low but steady. "Whatever you're being paid, I can double it." Victor smiled, a small cruel curl of his lips. "Your life is worth more dead than alive." Then his eyes flicked toward Naomi. "Hey, you," he said, motioning with the gun. "Cleaning lady." Naomi froze. The entire lobby was an echo chamber now, every breath amplified, every second stretching thin. "See this?" Victor asked, tapping the suppressor against his own skull. "See what's happening here?" Naomi didn't speak. "Walk away," he continued, voice like winter steel. "Keep that pretty mouth shut, or I'll put a bullet through your worthless head." One of his men snickered. "Think it understands you?" Victor didn't even glance at him. "These animals always do," he said. He turned back to Naomi. "Stay invisible, like a good little nobody." The insult hit with surgical precision, meant to humiliate, to remind her of her place. Naomi's jaw tightened. Her hands, rough and calloused from years of scrubbing tile and lifting buckets, gripped the mop handle until her knuckles blanched white. "Breathe, Reed." "Not yet." The men repositioned, forming a half circle around Ethan. Their movements were efficient, too efficient. Not thugs, not amateurs, soldiers, mercenaries, trained. And they had planned this. The only sound was the hum of the lobby lights and the soft squeak of Naomi's cart as she began to back away, slow and measured. Her eyes flicked to the reflective glass wall beside the elevators. In it she saw her own face framed against theirs, her navy uniform against their suits, her cleaning cart against their guns. Invisible versus invincible, at least that's what they thought. Victor waved her off with a lazy motion. Go, before I decide you're a problem. Naomi pushed her cart toward the service corridor, every muscle screaming to move faster, but her heartbeat slowed instead, steadying into combat rhythm. She could feel it, the shift. The air was different now. The geometry of the room rearranged itself in her mind into angles, distances, cover points. She turned the corner, disappearing into the dim hallway leading to the supply elevators. Her reflection vanished from the lobby glass. Behind her, Victor cocked his head slightly. She's gone, he muttered. Good. He had no idea what he just allowed to escape. Naomi reached the end of the corridor and leaned against the wall, chest rising and falling in controlled breaths. Her pulse drummed in her ears but her hands were steady. She opened the maintenance closet and slipped inside. The small space smelled of bleach and metal polish. Her cart was parked outside, but she still carried the utility belt she always kept. Duct tape, screwdriver, flashlight, pocket knife. Tools that in the right hands became weapons. She closed her eyes for one long second. Images came back like old ghosts. Dust storms over Fallujah, the ringing in her ears after explosions. The voice of her late husband, Marcus, handing her that silver challenge coin on the day she graduated Delta Force selection. Stay faithful, Naomi. Always faithful. Her hand brushed the coin now, smooth from years of carrying. Always, she whispered. Outside, the rain intensified, slapping against the tall glass panes of Empire Tower, like the city itself was warning her what was coming. 5 armed men, 1 target, dozens of civilians. She could call the police, but she'd heard enough to know the plan was airtight. Delayed response, cameras looped, distractions set. They had built a perfect trap, except for one variable they hadn't accounted for, the janitor, who wasn't just a janitor. Naomi straightened, eyes hardening into steel. In the mirror above the sink, her reflection no longer looked tired. It looked ready. Back in the lobby, Victor checked his watch, 8:43 p.m. The mark would arrive in 2 minutes. He nodded to his team. Positions. The marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Security guards were already gone, diverted by false alarms. The lobby felt empty, sterile, except for the quiet hum of danger hanging in the air. Naomi stepped into the freight elevator, pressed the button for the mezzanine, and whispered to herself, let's see if the invisible can still fight. The elevator doors slid shut with a metallic hiss, sealing her into darkness. Outside, lightning flashed across the Empire Tower's mirrored facade. Inside, death was taking its position, and somewhere between the two, a forgotten woman was about to change everything. The freight elevator hummed softly as it climbed, a slow pulse of machinery carrying Naomi through layers of silence. Each floor the numbers blinked past, 10, 11, 12, like heartbeats counting down to something inevitable. She closed her eyes. For a moment, the rhythm of the elevator chain sounded too much like helicopter rotors, and just like that, the past bled through. 12 years earlier, Al-Anbar province, Iraq. The heat had been brutal that day, dry and metallic, the kind that scraped lungs raw. Sergeant Naomi Reed, crouched behind a crumbling wall, radio pressed to her ear. Echo 1, this is Ghost. Package secured. Requesting immediate evac. Gunfire crackled in the distance. 3 shots, then silence. Her husband, Marcus Reed, had been on overwatch 2 blocks away. He'd said he'd cover her exit. He always did. The blast that followed had turned the horizon into a white sun. She remembered running, sand, smoke, blood, and later the military hospital in Germany, her leg in traction, her commanding officer's solemn face delivering the words that froze her world forever. He didn't make it. They gave her medals, commendations, a folded flag. But when the ceremony lights dimmed and the applause ended, no one asked what happened to soldiers when the fighting stopped. Back to present. The elevator chimed softly. The doors opened onto the staff maintenance level, a narrow corridor smelling of oil and bleach. Naomi stepped out, the overhead fluorescents flickering like dying stars. She leaned against the wall, exhaled slowly. The past was a wound that never closed, only learned to hide under long sleeves. After Marcus's death, she'd been medically discharged, left to navigate civilian life with half a limp and a bank account that evaporated under hospital bills. Her 2 children, Ava and Noah, were still toddlers then, The world didn't care that she'd once saved lives overseas. It only cared that she could scrub floors on time and smile for tips. Empire Tower had been her second chance, a stable job, regular paycheck, medical insurance for Noah's heart defect. 6 years of anonymity had taught her how to be invisible in plain sight. She wore silence like armor and humility like camouflage. But that armor was cracking tonight. She entered the janitorial storage bay, her small kingdom of mops, rags and forgotten tools. A faded photo of her kids was taped inside the locker door, edges curled from moisture. Beneath it lay a small wooden box wrapped in an old bandana. Naomi hesitated before lifting the lid. Inside rested the relics of a life she no longer spoke of, a ceramic blade designed for silent kills, a folded delta patch, the challenge coin Marcus had given her, engraved with their motto, faith, focus, fire. Her thumb brushed the coin's surface, tracing the engraved letters like a prayer, the same words she'd whispered through every deployment, every sleepless night since. Faith, she murmured, in something worth saving. Focus, she said, pocketing the coin. Fire, she breathed, her voice turning steel, only when there's no other way. Naomi pulled off her navy work shirt and replaced it with a black tactical undershirt she'd kept hidden under her spare clothes. Old habits die harder than soldiers. From the back of the locker, she retrieved a small tool satchel, duct tape, flashlight, zip ties, screwdriver, and a makeshift smoke compound she'd created from ammonia and cleaning acid. Improvised, but deadly in the right hands. Her reflection in the locker mirror looked unfamiliar now, no longer the quiet janitor, but the soldier who used to clear rooms in 10 seconds flat. The woman who once led a 6-person recon team through enemy territory. She flexed her wrist, the old scar from shrapnel caught the light. The hum of the building changed pitch. Naomi paused, listening. Through the air vents, she could hear radio static, muffled voices, foreign accents. They were already moving into position downstairs. Timing, she knew, would be everything. She checked her watch, 8:27 p.m. 3 minutes. She had to reach the mezzanine before the lobby went hot. Naomi slung the satchel over her shoulder and moved fast down the maintenance corridor, feet silent on the concrete. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly. She slipped through a side door and emerged into a service stairwell that spiraled down through the building's bones. The sound of rain on glass became a dull roar. Her thoughts drifted, uninvited, to Ethan Caldwell, the man now walking straight into a kill box. She'd seen him dozens of times, polite, soft-spoken, always saying thank you to staff who never heard it from anyone else. Last Christmas, when Noah's surgery bill had come due and she'd been out of options, a hospital administrator called to say an anonymous benefactor had paid everything in full. She had her suspicions. Ethan had smiled at her differently the next day, kind, knowing, without words. Maybe that was why she couldn't turn her back tonight. At the landing, she paused to catch her breath. The stairwell window looked out over the glittering sprawl of New York, rivers of headlights threading between towers. People below lived their lives unaware that inside one of those towers, death was being scheduled with military precision. Naomi wiped the fog from the glass, her reflection merging with the skyline. A ghost among the living. The elevator dinged somewhere below. Men's voices echoed faintly, sharp and foreign. She crouched, body tensing, moved to position alpha, eyes on target route. They sounded calm, confident, professionals who thought the night was already theirs. Naomi closed her eyes, centering herself the way Marcus had taught her before every mission. Slow breath, low pulse, sharp mind. Every instinct screamed danger, but beneath that was something purer, a quiet, burning resolve. She wasn't just protecting one man tonight. She was protecting the part of herself that still believed in duty. She reached the mezzanine door, hand hovering over the handle. The distant echo of heels clicked across marble below. Ethan Caldwell had arrived. Naomi's heartbeat steadied, matching the rhythm of the rain outside. This was it. The soldier inside her had woken up again, and there was no putting her back to sleep. She adjusted her grip on the satchel strap and whispered under her breath, "Marcus, watch over me." The door creaked open, revealing the glow of chandeliers from the lobby far below. From here she could see the predators taking their positions. And for the first time in 6 years, Naomi Reed wasn't invisible anymore. From the mezzanine, Naomi watched the scene below unfold with the detachment of a sniper, still calculating, heart quiet. The lobby gleamed beneath her like an altar of glass and marble, the chandeliers throwing constellations across the polished floor. The killers moved through it like shadows performing choreography. Victor Havel was the center of gravity. Every step, every gesture, every breath from his team orbited his will. 4 men in tailored suits, strategically spaced to form a kill box, one by the revolving doors, one beside the fountain, one near the elevators, one watching the stairwell. Professional, disciplined, and utterly unaware that death was watching them from above. Naomi crouched behind the mezzanine railing, her body aligned with the architecture. The black tactical shirt blended with the dark wood, her movements measured to the rhythm of silence. Through the vented panels below, she could see Victor glance at his watch, 8:28 p.m. 2 minutes. She unslung her satchel, laying out what little she had, a roll of duct tape, a ceramic knife, a small bottle of chemical mix she could ignite into smoke, and a long metal handle she'd detached from her mop earlier. Improvised tools, born of necessity, the kind of weapons that only a soldier who'd cleaned floors for 6 years would know how to make lethal. Her breathing slowed to one breath every 3 seconds. She had no backup, no radio, no armor, only training, instinct, and purpose. Below, Victor's voice broke the stillness. Positions confirmed. We do this clean, gentlemen. No noise, no mistakes. His accent carried the ice of Eastern Europe, clipped and deliberate. The others murmured in acknowledgement. One of them, the lean man by the fountain, was assembling a suppressor with calm efficiency. Another checked his wrist comm device. Naomi's eyes traced the geometry of their positioning, angles, lines of fire, blind spots. She could already see where they'd shoot, how the bullets would ricochet, where the blood would pool. Every mission begins with a map, Marcus used to tell her, even when the map is just inside your head. Her phone buzzed faintly in her pocket, a security app pinging the building's internal feeds. She'd set it up years ago to monitor maintenance sensors, but now it showed something else, camera loops. All feeds were repeating 5-minute cycles. They'd already hacked the surveillance grid. Smart, she thought, but not perfect. The loop didn't include the mezzanine's vent cameras. She still had eyes where they didn't. She tapped the screen and switched to manual feed. The 4 men appeared from different angles, unaware of the silent janitor, watching their every move through outdated security tech. A flash of motion caught her attention. Victor adjusted his cufflinks, revealing a thin scar running down his wrist, a mark she recognized instantly. She'd seen that same scar once in Baghdad. Back then, he'd been known as Ghost Wolf, a mercenary who hunted defectors and journalists. There were rumors he'd killed an entire family in Ankara, just to erase evidence of a data leak. Naomi had never crossed paths with him personally, but she'd read his file. It made her skin crawl. Below, the revolving doors whispered open. Ethan Caldwell stepped into the lobby. Gray suit, rain-darkened shoulders, a phone in his hand. Completely unaware, Naomi's pulse steadied. It's time. Victor turned, smiling the kind of smile that belonged to a predator moments before the kill. Mr. Caldwell, he said, stepping forward as his team subtly closed in. Naomi's hands moved without hesitation. She ripped duct tape into short strips, wrapped them around the mop handle's base to form a grip. The ceramic knife she wedged under the elastic of her belt. She poured 2 chemical compounds into an empty glass cleaner bottle, shook it once, instant smoke generator. Below, the dialogue continued, voices echoing faintly through the cavernous space. You have information that threatens powerful interests, Victor said smoothly. They send regrets and regards. Ethan frowned. If this is about my testimony, you're wasting your time. The evidence is already in congressional hands. Evidence, Victor repeated, almost kindly. Such a fragile word. Naomi slid open the vent panel, lowering herself into position directly above the fountain. Her mind switched into mission cadence, breath, muscle, precision. 2 minutes of chaos, she thought. That's all I need to create a window. Her heart didn't race anymore. It slowed. Every motion now was an echo of years spent in combat zones where hesitation meant death. She counted them silently. 5 enemies, 4 armed, 1 command lead. Primary target, Ethan Caldwell. Objective, extraction. Victor's watch beeped once. Now, he whispered. The world compressed into a single point of tension. The man near the revolving doors moved first, pulling his jacket aside, hand closing around the pistol's grip. The man by the fountain mirrored him. Victor drew his own weapon, sleek, black, suppressed. And above them, Naomi Reed released the vent's final latch. The ceiling tile shifted a fraction of an inch. Nobody looked up, not yet. Naomi's eyes flicked toward the main doors where rain streaked down the glass. The storm outside had turned violent, lightning illuminating the skyline like camera flashes. Each bolt framed the scene in harsh white light, as if the universe itself was trying to capture proof of what was about to happen. For a second, she thought of Ava and Noah asleep in their small Bronx apartment, unaware that their mother was crouched above a kill zone 30 miles away. She whispered their names. That steadied her better than any weapon could. Below, Victor raised his gun toward Ethan's head. The lobby fell utterly silent, save for the whisper of falling rain. Naomi gripped the metal rod tighter, her body coiled like a spring. 1 second more, she had to wait for the right angle. Too soon, and Ethan would die before she hit the ground. The marble floor beneath Victor shimmered with reflections. 5 men and a single unarmed victim. Then from the mezzanine, a drop of condensation fell from the vent and landed squarely on Victor's shoulder. He looked up, their eyes met for the first time. Naomi's expression was calm, almost serene. For a brief second, confusion flickered across Victor's face. Then realization dawned. The cleaning woman. But by the time the thought formed, Naomi was already in motion. The ceiling tile swung open. She dropped through like a shadow severed from heaven, knees bent, weapon drawn. The first man turned, mouth open to shout, too late. The metal handle cracked against his wrist, gun skittering across marble. Smoke exploded from the bottle. Naomi threw at the ground, clouding the air in a pale chemical haze. Screams echoed, muffled and distorted. Somewhere behind the chaos, a voice shouted in Russian. Contact, upstairs. Naomi vanished into the smoke, heart steady, mind sharp. Every step was deliberate, every strike precise. This was the world she'd been forged for, the one she'd tried to forget. But this time, she wasn't doing it for a flag. She was doing it for a promise. Below, Victor coughed, waving at the smoke, trying to regain visibility. He fired once into the haze, bullet ricocheting off the marble column. Somewhere behind him, Ethan dove for cover. The sound of gunfire and shattering glass filled the lobby, blending with the thunder outside. And through it all, Naomi's silhouette moved like something elemental, unstoppable, unseen, unyielding. When the smoke cleared, only fragments of sound remained. Footsteps, groans, the faint drip of water from the fountain. Naomi crouched behind a marble pillar, chest heaving, weapon ready. She could hear Victor's voice barking orders through the chaos. Find her. She's one of them. He didn't know yet that she was something else entirely. Naomi checked her watch, 8:31 p.m. The trap had been sprung, but the real battle hadn't even started. She looked toward the stairwell, Ethan's only possible escape route, then back at Victor's silhouette through the smoke. Her next move would decide everything. She took one steady breath, then whispered to herself, time to finish the setup. Smoke hung over the lobby like a low fog, thick enough to blur shapes into ghosts. The sprinklers hadn't gone off yet. Naomi had disabled the valve hours earlier while cleaning the service corridors, an old habit of preemptive control she couldn't explain at the time. Now it gave her the cover she needed. The faint hum of the air vents mixed with the sharp hiss of suppressed gunfire. 3 rounds cracked past the marble column. Naomi crouched behind, chipping white stone into dust. She inhaled slow, steady, breathe, count, move. Somewhere behind the smoke, Ethan Caldwell ducked beneath the reception counter, clutching the edge with trembling fingers. His phone had skittered across the floor. The screen blinked helplessly with a half-written text, call 911, Empire Tower shooters. He didn't even have time to hit send. Naomi peeked out. The man near the fountain, tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair slicked back, was sweeping his weapon in arcs, searching for a target through the haze. His footfalls were heavy, his angle lazy. He was used to killing civilians,
not trained soldiers. That arrogance would cost him. She moved low and fast, 3 silent steps, a pivot, a strike. The mop handle cracked against his knee. He staggered with a grunt, gun lowering just enough for Naomi to drive her elbow into his throat. One clean motion, years of combat condensed into muscle memory. He collapsed without a sound, gun slipping from his fingers and disappearing into the smoke. Target down, she murmured instinctively under her breath. 3 left. Across the lobby, Victor Havel barked orders in Russian, voice sharp and cold. Fan out, secure the exits. Naomi could tell from the rhythm of his commands, controlled but irritated. He'd underestimated her once, he wouldn't again. Her hearing picked up the faintest scrape of leather against marble, one of his men flanking left near the elevator bank. She rolled behind a column, as another suppressed shot cracked the air. The bullet tore through her shoulder sleeve, close enough that she felt the burn of displaced air. She bit down on a grunt. Pain was noise. Noise got you killed. She scanned the ground, fragments of glass, a half-empty bottle of polish, the brass desk lamp she'd used earlier in the week. Improvised weapon. Naomi kicked the lamp toward the sound of footsteps, then dove the opposite way. The assassin fired at the noise, and that one split second of mistake was enough. She slammed the butt of her knife into his jaw, twisted his wrist until she heard bone crack, then swept his legs. He went down hard, weapon spinning across the floor. Naomi pressed the knife to his throat. Stay down. He didn't, so she made sure he would. The smoke was thinning now, the air clearing to reveal chaos. 2 men down, 2 still active. Ethan crouched behind the counter, staring through the haze, disbelief written across his face. That woman, the one who scrubbed floors at night, who smiled politely in elevators, was fighting trained killers like she'd been born for it. And she moved like water, not frantic, not fearful, controlled, precise, deadly. Victor's silhouette appeared through the smoke, pistol raised. His expression had shifted, less arrogance now, more calculation. He crouched beside the body of one of his fallen men, studied the wound, then looked up toward Naomi's position. When he spoke, his voice was steady, cold. You're good, he said. Delta Force, maybe. Afghanistan. Iraq. Naomi said nothing. Victor smirked. Doesn't matter, you're still outnumbered, and you're bleeding. She looked down. He was right. The bullet had grazed her shoulder, staining the black fabric with a slow, dark bloom.
Funny, she said quietly. You talk like you've already won. I have, Victor replied. You just don't know it yet. He nodded to the last of his men, a wiry figure perched near the second-floor staircase, rifle aimed at Ethan's position. Naomi's pulse kicked. She couldn't reach him in time. The shot cracked. Glass exploded, but not from the rifle. Naomi had thrown the bottle of cleaning acid mid-spin and it shattered across the shooter's face. He screamed, clawing at his eyes as the corrosive chemical burned. His rifle clattered down the stairs. Naomi didn't hesitate. She vaulted over the reception counter, grabbed Ethan by the collar and dragged him toward the maintenance door at the far end of the lobby. Move, I can't. You want to live, she snapped. Move now. Ethan stumbled to his feet, and together they sprinted toward the door as bullets shattered the glass walls behind them. Marble shards rained across the floor like hailstones. They burst through the service corridor. Naomi slamming the door shut behind them. Her chest heaved, lungs burning, adrenaline blazing through every vein. She pressed her back against the wall, knife in one hand, gun in the other, one she'd picked up off the floor during the chaos. Ethan leaned against the opposite wall, shaking. Who the hell are you? He breathed. Naomi's eyes flicked toward him, calm despite the blood streaking her arm. Someone who should have stayed invisible. Behind the door, Victor's voice echoed faintly through the destroyed lobby. Find them, lock the stairwells. They're not leaving this building alive. Naomi closed her eyes, calculating paths in her head, the maintenance shafts, the vent routes, the freight elevators. She could get Ethan out, but not without facing Victor again. This wasn't over. Not even close. She pushed off the wall and started down the narrow hallway, motioning for Ethan to follow. Where are we going? He asked. Somewhere with a better view, she said. Of what? She glanced over her shoulder, eyes dark but alive. The men who thought they could kill you. They disappeared into the shadows of the stairwell, footsteps echoing softly against the concrete. Somewhere above them the emergency lights flickered, Victor's men moving, sealing exits closing in. Naomi's pulse slowed again, her mind already building the next phase. If she wanted to end this, she'd have to turn the hunter into the hunted, and she knew exactly how. The corridor lights dimmed as they reached the maintenance control level. Naomi paused, listening to the rumble of approaching footsteps below. Her reflection in the steel door looked different again, tired, bloodied, but unbroken. This was her battlefield now. And if Victor wanted to finish this, he'd have to do it on her terms. She reached into her satchel, pulling out the small remote that controlled the building's air circulation dampers. Her thumb hovered over the switch. "You wanted a clean operation," she whispered under her breath. "Let's make it messy." She pressed the button. A deep mechanical growl rolled through Empire Tower as the vents sealed and the lights began to flicker one by one. Somewhere far below, Victor lifted his head, realizing too late that the balance of power had shifted. The predator had just entered the cage. Naomi turned to Ethan. "Stay close," she said. Her eyes hardened like steel. "Next we end this." The hum of Empire Tower changed pitch. What had been a living building, a cathedral of light, glass and commerce, now sounded like a machine suffocating on its own breath. Every vent Naomi had sealed in the maintenance system groaned under pressure. Airflow stopped, smoke hung heavier. The automatic lights dimmed into flickering pulses that stretched the lobby's shadows into moving shapes. Naomi stood at the end of the service corridor, knife still slick with someone else's blood, gun in her left hand, remote clutched in her right. Beside her, Ethan Caldwell leaned against the wall, breathing hard but trying to keep up. His white dress shirt was torn, his tie hanging loose like a noose half untied. "You shut down the air," he said, voice hoarse. "Why?" "To make them nervous," Naomi replied. "Men like Victor are trained for open fights, not dark corners." She peeked through the small maintenance window overlooking the lobby below. Victor's remaining men were spreading out, flashlights cutting through the haze like scalpels. Their movements had changed, less confident now, less precise. Good. That meant they were starting to feel what she wanted them to feel. Fear. Naomi turned to the wall panel, pried it open with her knife, and exposed a bundle of fiber lines and electrical conduits. The blue cable marked COM primary blinked faintly. She cut it with one quick motion. Downstairs, every security camera feed went dark. "Now they're blind," she said. Ethan exhaled, half awe, half terror. "You've done this before. More times than I care to remember." She pulled another panel open, found the building's emergency PA line and hot-wired it with 2 stripped wires. The speakers above the lobby hissed, then came to life with a faint crackle. Naomi pressed the mic button. Her voice carried through the marble halls like smoke curling around fire. "Victor Havel," she said quietly. "You're trapped. You can't see me, but I can see you." A pause, then a harsh laugh echoed back through the open channels. "You think this scares me, janitor?" Victor's voice rolled through the darkness, distorted but confident. "You sealed your own fate. My men will find you first." Naomi's lips curved into something close to a smile. "Come find me then." She switched off the mic. Ethan swallowed hard. "You just told them where we are." "No," Naomi said, turning from the panel. "I told them where they think we are." She moved fast now, ducking through the stairwell door and motioning for him to follow. The dim lights threw their shadows across the concrete like ghosts running parallel. Her mind mapped every step of the tower. She'd cleaned every floor, every hallway, every service duct. It was more familiar to her than her own apartment. She knew where to vanish, where to strike. "Where are we going?" Ethan whispered. "Up," she said. "To the mezzanine controls." "What's there?" "Options." They climbed 2 flights, Naomi pausing to check each landing. Through the grated floor panels below, faint shouts echoed upward, foreign accents, boots pounding marble, the sharp command of Victor's voice. The hunters were moving, but they were moving blind. On the mezzanine, the world opened into a cathedral of glass and gold light from the city bleeding through the rain. Naomi crouched beside a ventilation shaft, pried open the panel with the screwdriver she'd carried for years. From here she could hear Victor's voice more clearly. "She's ex-military," he said. "Delta, maybe C, doesn't matter. We finish this. Kill her first. Caldwell second. Naomi watched him pace near the fountain, weapon drawn, smoke still curling around him like a halo of ash. His composure hadn't cracked, but his voice had. Beneath the calm, there was frustration. And beneath that something else, fear of losing control. Ethan crouched beside her, whispering, "There's no way we can fight all of them. We don't need to fight all of them." Naomi said, "Just one." She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small chemical pouch, sealed in plastic. The label read Caustic Mix C02, a cleaning acid she'd repurposed years ago to dissolve concrete grime. Combined with ammonia, it became a crude smoke grenade with a 30-second ignition delay. She tore the corner with her teeth, poured it into a glass bottle from her cart, and added the catalyst powder. The bottle hissed faintly, heat rising from within. Ethan's eyes widened. "That's a bomb." "Just smoke," Naomi said, "but they won't know that." She sealed it, stepped toward the railing, and dropped the bottle into the lobby. It shattered beside the fountain, releasing a thick, acrid cloud that rolled outward like spilled fog. Below, the assassins shouted in alarm. One of them fired into the smoke. Another shouted, "Gas, mask up," panic, confusion. Perfect. Naomi seized the moment. "Move." They ran along the mezzanine toward the far stairwell. The flickering emergency lights cast everything in flashes, white, black, as though the world itself was strobing between life and death. Halfway down the hall, Naomi froze. Footsteps, coming fast. She motioned for Ethan to stop, then pressed her back against the wall. A figure emerged from the stairwell, tall, lean, wearing a tactical vest. Not Victor, one of his men. Naomi moved before he could aim. She grabbed his wrist, twisted, forced the gun toward the ceiling, and drove her knee into his ribs. The impact knocked the air from his lungs. His gun fired once into the ceiling, then clattered away. Naomi spun him into the wall, arm locked behind his back. "Where's Victor?" she hissed. The man groaned, spat blood, and muttered, "You can't win." Naomi's knife whispered from her belt. "I didn't ask if I could, I asked where." He broke in less than 2 seconds. "Lobby, near the fountain, he's calling reinforcements." Naomi slammed his head into the wall, hard enough to drop him unconscious, not dead. Ethan stared, shaken. She wiped the blade on the man's vest. "That's our cue." They reached the service elevator, Naomi prying open the control panel and hot wiring it with 2 crossed wires. The doors slid open with a soft chime that sounded almost absurdly civilized amid the chaos. She gestured for Ethan to step in, but before she could follow, a distant explosion rattled the floor beneath them. The glass trembled, the lights flickered out completely. Victor's voice came faintly through the comm system, static-laced but unmistakable. "You think you can run, Naomi? There's no way out. The building's locked down, every exit sealed. I control the elevators. The only way out is through me." Naomi stared into the darkness, the flickering elevator light painting her face in pale gold. "Then that's where we're going," she said. Ethan blinked. "You mean straight to him?" she interrupted. "You want to survive this, Mr. Caldwell. We take the fight to the source." She hit the override. The elevator doors closed. The hum of descent filled the silence. Ethan swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. "You've done this before." Naomi's gaze stayed fixed on the floor indicator as it ticked downward. "Too many times. But not like this. Why risk it? You could walk away, let the police handle it." "The police won't make it in time," she said quietly. "And this isn't about orders anymore." "Then what's it about?" Naomi looked at him then, eyes tired but fierce. "Redemption." The elevator reached the lobby level with a soft chime that sounded too gentle for what waited beyond. Naomi raised her weapon, listened to the silence that followed. Smoke drifted under the door. The lights flickered like dying embers. Somewhere in that smoke, Victor waited. Naomi exhaled once, steady and calm. "Stay behind me," she said, her voice low, unwavering. "When this door opens, it's going to get loud." Ethan nodded, his throat dry. "And after that?" Naomi glanced toward the panel, finger hovering over the button. "After that," she said, "we finish what they started." The elevator doors slid open. Smoke poured in like a living thing. Naomi stepped forward, gun raised, vanishing into the haze. The lobby was a theater gone hostile.
Smoke still curled in lazy eddies, catching in the chandeliers and turning the polished marble into something that looked less like a floor than a frozen ocean. The emergency lights gave everything an angry cinematic tint, faces in half-shadow, reflections broken into shards. Naomi stepped out from the elevator with Ethan tight behind her. The world opened into a chaos she'd already rehearsed 1,000 times in her head. Now the choreography began for real. Victor was there, center stage, a black silhouette framed by chaos. He'd rallied what remained of his team into a compact shield around himself. Discipline tightened them into a human wedge. He saw Naomi, and for the first time that night, his expression was not entirely composed. Her first move was small and almost formal. A glance, a breath, a micro-assessment. Distance to Victor, 30 feet. Obstacles, fountain to the left, concierge desk to the right, one dead body, slumped near the revolving doors to her rear. Angle of approach, along the line of columns, low to the ground. Cover and concealment, a dozen decorative planters and a pair of dropped umbrellas. She moved like a thought, silent, economical. 2 steps, then a low sweep, using the columns to fragment Victor's sightline, using the smoke to become only a suggestion of motion. As she crept, Ethan dragged a chair from a scattered lobby set and used it to block the broader field of fire. He was no soldier, but he was learning. Victor's radio spat static. Someone shouted in a language Naomi only partially recognized. The men around him were tense. Their earlier precision had gone somewhere with the certainty they'd had before the smoke. "Come out," Victor called, voice ricocheting off marble. "You can't hide forever." Naomi didn't answer. Her hands were busy. She unscrewed the lamp on the concierge desk with 2 deft motions, wrapped the cord around the base for a grip, felt the weight and balance like muscle memory. In the same breath, she broke a vial of polish, flicked it so a smear of slippery goo speckled the nearest stretch of marble. A small, ugly trap. A rifle whipped toward her position, muzzle flaring. The shooter, lean, nervous, took a snapshot. Naomi moved, the bullet shaved past her elbow. She pitched the lamp. It struck the shooter's wrist. The gun ricocheted and clattered away. The man fell, hands flailing, and Naomi closed the gap in 2 strides. She was efficiency incarnate. Elbow into jaw, knee into sternum, joint locked to the wrist. The motion was clean, precise, a geometric answer to violence. The man was down before his breath could form blame. Victor hissed something restrained and furious. He drew his pistol and fired. The shot tore a clean arc through the chandelier glass above, raining glittering fragments down, like cursed snow. One shard nicked Naomi's cheek. Pain flared, hot and sharp, instantly swallowed by adrenaline. She tasted copper, and hated its intimacy. The fight tightened into a slice of hours less time. Naomi braided violence and improvisation into a deadly seam. She used the lamp's cord like a garrote when she had to. She slammed a reception desk into a charging man, and used its weight to pin him. She moved with a teacher's economy. Minimal steps, maximum effect. Ethan found a rhythm too. He was not graceful, but he was decisive. He dragged a fallen security guard's baton, and held off a flanking attacker long enough for Naomi to finish the job. He smoked, coughed, but his face had a new line cut through it. Something like recognition. He was no longer only the man who'd been nearly killed for coming to tell truths. Victor watched. He adjusted, recalculated, tried to steer his men into a crossfire that favored them. He barked orders that were half prayer, half command. One of his men, short and wiry, with a predator's grin, slipped behind a column and leveled for a backshot. Naomi anticipated. She slid behind a planter and used the broken glass from the chandelier like a mirror, angling it to catch the shooter's eye with a flash. The man blinked, reflexive, and in that blink Naomi exploded. A low sprint, a shoulder into his back, a twist that left him flopping on marble. The tide turned quickly after that. A good team holds together, but a team that depends on superiority starts to unravel when the superiority evaporates. Victor's men were excellent killers. They had earned their reputations, but they were not a single organism. A few broken bones, a little terror, and the efficiency leached away. Naomi made a decision. She could finish them, kill, and end the immediate threat, or she could make them witnesses. Her choices now would ripple for months, years. She thought of Marcus and the things the world had taken from her. She thought of Av, Noah's small stubborn courage. She thought of the way Ethan had looked at the hospital clerk when he'd asked about an anonymous donor. She chose the compromise of survival and accountability. She took a step aimed not at a throat but at a radio, and in one fluid motion ripped it from a fallen man's vest and smashed it under a heel. No more comms. Then she made louder moves, slamming a palm into a face, wrenching a weapon to the floor, forcing hands up, binding wrists with zip ties until they were sore and useless. By the time the lobby finally stilled into the ragged, breathing pause after violence, 3 of Victor's men lay unconscious or whimpering on marble. One crawled, clutching his arm, trying to make for the revolving doors. Naomi's boot found his back and pushed him prone. Ethan put a boot on his shoulder, hands trembling but firm. Victor stood alone, breath ragged, eyes sharp as a blade that had just missed its mark. He lifted his hands in a gesture that might have once passed for surrender, but his mouth kept shaping threats. Naomi stepped close enough to see a map of age and travel etched into his face. "You're finished," she said, voice low and flat. "Stay down." Victor laughed, thin, humorless. "You think this is the end," he hissed. "You think the people who sent me will not answer with more than men in suits. You think they will not make you a story and then bury it." Naomi felt the familiar, old itch in her gut, the political calculus of power the military had taught her to ignore until she recognized it. She had not gone to war against money and influence. She'd gone to save a life, but she could see he was right in one way: the physical fight was only the beginning. "You run one way," she said, "you hide, you rebuild, but you won't make this go away just by throwing money at it. People saw, phones saw, someone will hold you to it." Victor's smirk cracked into a harder thing, anger edged with something like fear. He glanced toward the elevators, calculating a path of retreat. For the first time he considered escape. Naomi tightened the zip tie around a wrist until it bit. "You'll answer for this," she said, "one way or another." He tried one last thing, a heavy practiced swing, with the butt of his pistol aimed at Naomi's head. She moved and used his momentum, arm trap, knee into ribs, and turned him to the floor. Her knee hovered over his back. He found himself on his stomach, winded, unable to meet her eyes. Sirens finally wailed distantly, real ones, coming through rain and street, and something that sounded like law. The steam of the building's life, mixed with the acrid smell of smoke, and the lobby, which had been a crucible, began to cool. Ethan relaxed for the first time that night, as the emergency lights cut through the smoke and uniformed officers poured into the lobby, weapons up, shouting orders. The first responders moved with a different, legal stiffness. They herded survivors, tended the wounded, and cuffed the limp bodies of men who had once been confident enough to think themselves above consequence. A cop's hand landed on Naomi's elbow. "Ma'am, we need you to step back." She let him guide her, but she did not step away from Victor. She watched as masked forensics technicians moved in, cameras beginning their slow, clinical documentation. Smartphones still burned hot in pockets and hands around the perimeter, witnesses recording, faces pale, the world watching. Someone's live feed already carried grainy footage of Naomi's movements, shot from an angle that didn't tell the whole story but told enough. A woman in black, fierce and unflinching, a fountain spattered with water and glass, a man in a suit saved. A hashtag was already forming in the comments, before the feed even stopped buffering. Naomi's cheek burned where glass had nicked her, but the pain was nothing compared to the awareness that what came next would not be decided by marble and bravery alone. The legal and the social would now step into the arena. Statements, interrogations, headlines, and narratives that could be bent and broken like cheap metal. Victor was hauled to his feet and cuffed, still spitting venom. His men lay groaning. Ethan leaned against the reception desk, breathing hard, feeling the echo of his near death like an aftershock. A medic pressed a damp cloth to Naomi's cheek. "You okay?" he asked, voice gentle but tight. She nodded. Her hands trembled a beat, then steadied. She had done the thing she had to do. Outside, the rain had softened into a fine mist that made the city lights blur into halos. The lobby's glass facade reflected everything back with a strange clarity: people, cameras, and the one woman who refused to be invisible. As officers took witness statements and the world beyond the marble watched and waited, Naomi felt the slow creep of something else, the knowledge that the fight would shift from fists and steel to words and influence, that the men she'd flattened with her hands had friends with lawyers and financiers with motives. She tucked the ceramic blade back into her belt, wiped a smear of blood from her cheek with the back of her hand, and looked at Ethan. "We need to get statements straight," she said, voice low. "Names, times, everything you can remember." He nodded, still pale. "I'd tell them. I will tell the truth." Naomi allowed herself a short, hard breath, for now the lobby held its fragile victory. For now Victor and his men were contained, but in the distance, like an afternote, she heard a different sound. The soft ping of a notification, the whisper of a network alive and thinking. The cameras would be parsed, the clips looped, the angles examined, the story would be told, one way or another. She closed her eyes for a second and breathed in that mixture of smoke and rain. Then she set her jaw and stepped forward to the police line. She would say what needed saying. She would mark the facts and let them stand, because the next battle, she could see it now, would be fought in rooms without windows, on screens without faces, and in stories that could be bent to serve power. And she would not cede that ground. She straightened, feeling the weight of the challenge coin warm against her ribs, and let the officers guide her toward the cluster of journalists forming beyond the police barricade. Behind her, Victor's cuffed form was led past the fountain, and somewhere in the crowd, the first phone streamed a shaky clip that would be re-uploaded 1,000 times. Naomi glanced at that phone, at the image of herself frozen mid-action, and thought, let them watch, let them see. The glass doors of Empire Tower reflected the wet city like 1,000 watchful eyes. Naomi stepped into that reflection, and for the first time in a long time, she let herself be seen. Morning came gray and indifferent. The city looked the same, traffic lights blinking, taxis honking, steam rising from manholes, but something had shifted. The world wasn't just watching Naomi Reed anymore, it was dividing over her. By sunrise, 3 versions of her story had already solidified across the internet, each with its own army of believers. Version 1, the hero narrative, a janitor turned guardian angel, a working-class woman who risked her life to save a billionaire. People posted her photo with hashtags like #invisible, no more and #housekeeper hero. Think pieces celebrated her as the new face of courage, proof that valor wears work boots. Version 2, the stage conspiracy. Anonymous accounts, some newly created, all suspiciously synchronized, claimed the entire scene was faked. That Naomi and Ethan had collaborated on a media stunt to manipulate public sympathy before his congressional testimony. A viral thread on X accused Naomi of being a crisis actor. Others pointed out how perfectly cinematic the footage had been. Version 3, the psychological collapse. Cable news anchors spoke in hushed, patronizing tones about trauma in the veteran community. Pundits dissected her service record like vultures at a carcass. PTSD, they whispered. Delusions of grandeur. A morning show ran the headline, Hero or Hazard, did trauma turn soldier into threat? Naomi watched it all from the couch in her small Bronx apartment. The television light painted her face in alternating shades of blue and white. Ava sat beside her, knees drawn to her chest.
Noah hovered near the doorway watching with the quiet dread only children learn from seeing adults break. On the screen, one of Victor's associates appeared from a hospital room. His neck brace framed eyes hollow with rehearsed sincerity. He told reporters he forgave Naomi, that he understood she believed she was protecting someone, and that he hoped she would seek the help she clearly needs. Naomi turned off the TV. For a long time the only sound was the city outside and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Ava's voice was barely above a whisper. "They're saying you made it up, Mom." "I know, is it true?" Naomi looked at her daughter, then really looked. "You were raised by a woman who tells the truth, Ava. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Noah frowned. Then why are they lying about us? Because the truth scares people with power. Later that afternoon, Special Agent Camille Torres arrived at the apartment. She didn't knock loudly, just enough to announce the federal presence without inviting the neighbors' curiosity. Her dark trench coat was slick from the rain, her posture all business. Naomi poured her a cup of coffee. They sat at the kitchen table under a humming ceiling light. Camille placed a folder between them, thick, stamped confidential. Inside were photos, intercepted wire transfers, false passports, encrypted chat logs. You were right, Camille said. Victor wasn't freelancing. The assassination was contracted through a shell network spanning Dubai, Moscow, and DC. The same structure funds disinformation farms. That's why your name's trending. You're not just a witness, Naomi. You're a liability to them. Naomi's jaw clenched. So they're trying to destroy me before I can testify. Exactly. And they're good at it. Camille slid her phone across the table. The screen displayed a spreadsheet of hundreds of bot accounts, all amplifying the same lie about Naomi being mentally unstable. They use psychology as a weapon, flood the feeds until nobody can tell what's real. Then the public moves on. Naomi stared at the screen, anger simmering under exhaustion. All those years of training, she said softly, and I never realized the next war would be fought in comment sections. Camille nodded grimly. That's the game. You can't shoot misinformation. You outlast it. You prove it wrong, line by line, in court. By evening, Naomi's building was surrounded by reporters. Their cameras reflected in the rain-slick glass of the front doors, each light a miniature explosion. Ava's classmates had stopped texting. Noah's teacher called to suggest home study for a while. Even the church Naomi's mother attended in Atlanta issued a public statement urging prayers for Miss Reed's recovery from her recent violent episode. Naomi had faced ambushes before, but never like this, never where the battlefield was her reputation. When Camille returned that night, she brought 2 agents to relocate them to a safe house in Queens. Until the testimony, you're under federal protection, she said. Naomi packed only what mattered: a duffel bag, her children's photos, the challenge coin. As they drove through the rain, the city lights smeared across the windshield like a watercolor bleeding under pressure. Ava leaned her head against Naomi's shoulder. Are we going to be okay? Naomi pressed a kiss into her hair. We will, but first I have to finish what I started. The safe house was a rented brownstone tucked between a deli and a laundromat, one of those places designed to be forgettable. Camille set up temporary comms in the living room. Multiple monitors showing news coverage, social media trackers, and encrypted channels scrolling in real time. Every few seconds, Naomi's face appeared on another feed, frozen mid-action from the lobby footage. Right now, you're the most famous woman in the country, Camille said. Naomi smirked tiredly. Funny, I was invisible 2 weeks ago. Camille looked up from her screen. Fame isn't power, Naomi. Not unless you use it. The question is, how do you want this story told? Naomi thought about that for a long time. She thought about the marble floor slick with blood, the men who had called her worthless, the online mobs repeating the same cruelty in new languages. She thought of her children, of how every click and headline would shape how the world saw them too. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, steady. I want them to see the truth. All of it. No filters, no edits. You said the world runs on stories, then I'll tell mine before they do. Camille hesitated. That'll paint a target on you. Then let them aim, Naomi said. At least I'll be standing in the open this time. The next morning, Naomi went live. No press agent, no teleprompter, no corporate polish, just her sitting at the small kitchen table of the safe house, wearing a plain gray hoodie, her hair pulled back, her eyes unflinching. She began simply, my name is Naomi Reed. You've seen the videos, you've heard the lies. Let me tell you what really happened. For 15 minutes she spoke about Empire Tower, about Victor's men, about what it means to be invisible until someone needs saving. She didn't cry, she didn't perform, she just told the truth. The stream exploded within hours, tens of millions of views, reactions pouring in from around the world. The footage spread faster than the lies ever had, because this time, it came with authenticity. She wasn't a headline, she was human again. Camille watched from the next room, arms crossed, face unreadable. That was risky, she said. Naomi looked at her, So was breathing in that lobby. By dusk, Ethan Caldwell issued a public statement backing Naomi's testimony. His words were deliberate, controlled, and devastating for Victor's defense. "I owe my life to Naomi Reed. She didn't just protect me, she protected the truth." The tide began to turn. Networks that had vilified her started running retrospectives on online smear campaigns. Talk shows that once mocked her invited veterans advocates to speak about digital harassment. But Camille knew what Naomi didn't. The people behind Victor weren't done. The media war had only bought them time to prepare a real counterstrike, one that wouldn't be fought with words, but with something far more personal. The storm finally broke on the morning Naomi Reed took the stand. The sky over Manhattan was a bruised gray, the kind that promised both cleansing and destruction. Federal courthouses glistened wet under streetlight halos. Reporters lined the steps shoulder to shoulder, microphones raised like weapons. The scent of rain mixed with adrenaline and cheap coffee. Inside, under vaulted ceilings and the unblinking eyes of history, Naomi sat at the witness table, hands folded, posture straight, the same quiet steadiness she'd carried through the gunfire in Empire Tower. But this was a different battlefield. Here the weapons were words. The bullets were implications, and truth bled slower. Across from her sat Victor Havel, clean suit, composed expression. The faint trace of smugness curling at his lips. His lawyers flanked him like marble statues, imposing, silent, paid enough to rewrite morality if the retainer was right. Naomi had faced killers before, but none like this, none who could assassinate truth in real time. The courtroom clerk adjusted the microphone. "Please state your name for the record." Naomi leaned forward, her voice calm but resonant. "Naomi Elizabeth Reed, occupation, custodial services supervisor at Empire Tower, until the incident. And military service, United States Navy, Special Operations, 12 years. The courtroom was silent enough to hear pens scratching. She began her testimony. The planning, the overheard threats, the men she'd seen armed in the service corridor, the choice she made to intervene. She spoke the way she fought, precise, disciplined, without excess motion. Every sentence carried the rhythm of survival. When it was Victor's attorney's turn, the tone shifted. He stood slowly, voice oiled with courtesy. "Miss Reed, thank you for your service," he began. "But you'll forgive me if I question your judgment." Naomi didn't blink. "Go ahead." He smiled, a rehearsed courtroom smile that always preceded a knife. "Isn't it true that you suffer from PTSD? I was evaluated after my discharge. I manage it, he repeated, letting the word drip with condescension. "And yet you engaged in lethal combat inside a public hotel lobby, unarmed, unsupported, and untrained for civilian security." "I engaged to save a life," Naomi said evenly, "because nobody else would." The lawyer paced, sensing the cameras catching every angle. "But you had options. You could have called the police." "I did, and still you chose violence." "I chose action." The exchange rippled through the room. Reporters scribbled, flashbulbs popped. The lawyer's smile tightened. "Or perhaps you chose attention. A chance to play hero again. Maybe you missed the adrenaline." Naomi leaned forward, voice dropping into the dangerous calm of memory. "I didn't miss anything. You don't miss watching people die. You don't miss burying friends. And I sure as hell didn't miss being invisible while people like your client bought silence with blood money." The silence that followed wasn't polite, it was reverent. Camille Torres, sitting in the gallery, allowed herself the smallest nod. Ethan Caldwell's gaze flicked from Naomi to Victor, jaw tight. The billionaire knew what was coming next, the part the world hadn't yet seen. Camille had spent the previous night combing through digital evidence, tracing Victor's payments through offshore accounts and encrypted wallets. The disinformation campaign, the shell companies, the international contractors, it all connected. Now she watched as the federal prosecutor stepped forward. "Your Honor, the government requests permission to introduce new evidence obtained by court order at 600 hours this morning." A USB drive gleamed under fluorescent lights. The prosecutor plugged it into the display monitor. A series of photos flashed on screen, grainy surveillance stills, timestamps matching the night of the attack. Victor's men entering the building from the service corridor. The same faces Naomi had described. Then came the bombshell audio recovered from Victor's encrypted phone. his voice unmistakable, giving the order, "Make it look like a robbery, no witnesses." The courtroom gasped, Victor's mask cracked, his lawyers whispered frantically, pale as stone. Naomi didn't move, she just watched as the man who'd called her worthless now choked on his own certainty. The judge's gavel struck like a gunshot. Order, but order had already shifted. 2 days later the verdict arrived, guilty on all counts. Conspiracy, attempted assassination, obstruction of justice, and violations under the Anti-Terrorism Act. Victor's empire collapsed overnight, his offshore accounts frozen, his handlers under federal investigation. His name, once whispered with fear, became shorthand for failure. Naomi sat on the courthouse steps as the news broke live. Cameras swarmed, but she didn't flinch. Camille stood nearby, speaking into her earpiece, managing the flow of officials, reporters, and truth itself. Ethan joined her on the steps, holding out a folded newspaper. The headline read, "Custodian turned hero ends global murder network." Naomi stared at the words for a moment, then let the paper fold back into itself. "I'm not a hero," she said softly, "I just refuse to stay quiet." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's exactly what heroes say." By sunset the city was glowing again. Empire Tower, once crime scene now symbol, had become a shrine to resilience. The management had replaced the shattered marble tiles with a mosaic white stone streaked with veins of gold. At its center an inscription read, "For those who clean the world and still carry its weight." Naomi stood there quietly, fingers brushing over the letters. For the first time in months, she felt something close to peace, not the easy kind, but the earned kind. Camille approached. "The foundation paperwork's ready," she said. "We can announce it tomorrow." Naomi looked up. "The foundation." Camille smiled. "The Invisible Hands Fund, legal protection and education grants for service workers. Your idea, remember." Naomi exhaled, a laugh catching somewhere between pride and disbelief. "I didn't think you'd actually do it." Camille shrugged. "You fought for your story, now it fights for others." Naomi turned back toward the lobby. The marble reflected her like a ghost finally given flesh. Somewhere deep inside, she could feel Marcus's voice again, steady, proud, certain. "You made it out of the dark, sailor." She closed her eyes and whispered, "I know." That night Naomi returned to her apartment for the first time since the safe house. Ava had drawn a sign and taped it to the door. "Welcome home, Mom." Inside the lights were warm. Noah ran into her arms, laughing, safe. The world outside was still chaotic, still cruel. But inside this small circle, there was calm. She tucked them into bed, kissed their foreheads, and sat by the window with a mug of cooling coffee. The skyline shimmered in the rain. The war of narratives had ended, the truth had survived. But as she looked out over the city, Naomi knew something the news didn't. This wasn't just a personal victory. It was a spark. Invisible workers were beginning to speak out everywhere. Custodians, guards, drivers, cooks, people who'd seen too much for too long. And they were using her name as a banner. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about recognition. Naomi smiled faintly. Let them see. Somewhere, half a world away, another man watched the verdict replay from a private compound, one of Victor's former clients, his face half lit by the glow of multiple screens. He tapped an encrypted phone. "She's alive," he said in Russian. And louder than ever, a pause. Then a cold reply crackled through the speaker. "Then we make sure her silence is permanent." The man's reflection darkened. The storm wasn't over. The city never truly slept, but that night it felt like it was holding its breath. Outside Naomi Reed's window, the neon haze of Manhattan glowed soft and blue, the sound of sirens distant, almost polite. Inside her apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kids had fallen asleep curled under blankets that still smelled faintly of hotel soap and rain. The world believed the war was over, but Naomi's instincts, the old combat kind that lived beneath her skin like a second heartbeat, told her otherwise. She sat by the window, coffee cooling in her hands, eyes scanning the streets below. For weeks she had been called hero, liar, symbol, threat, each title heavier than the last, each one attracting a different kind of attention. Her phone buzzed once, face down on the table, unknown number. No message preview, then again and again. Finally she turned it over. "We see you."
Enjoy the peace while it lasts. No sender. No traceable metadata. Camille would later call it digital intimidation. Naomi called it what it was, a warning. She killed the screen and stared out the window. A black SUV rolled slowly past the curb, headlights dimmed. Not the usual federal issue. She noted the license plate, fake. The reflection caught her eyes just long enough to register the man in the passenger seat, staring up at her window before the car vanished into the traffic. Her hand moved unconsciously to the coin in her pocket, the one Marcus had given her when she first wore the seal trident. Stay ready, even when you're tired. The next morning, the headlines were still full of triumph. Havel convicted, Reed testifies, justice served. Cable anchors smiled too wide, politicians praised the strength of American resilience, and hashtags like #NaomiNation trended worldwide. Naomi couldn't enjoy any of it. She'd seen too many endings turn into new beginnings for darker games. Camille Torres shared her caution. When they met at the federal building that afternoon, the agent looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days. Files were spread across the conference table like the aftermath of a paper explosion, photos, financial trails, intercepted calls. Victor wasn't the head, Camille said, rubbing her temples. He was a subcontractor, a specialist for hire. The real command chain runs deeper, corporate, political, international. We're calling it the Shadow Network. Naomi frowned. You're telling me the people who sent him are still out there? I'm telling you they just lost billions in contracts, and they don't forgive debt. Camille replied, and we just intercepted chatter suggesting a new operation, codename Marble Echo. Naomi's blood ran cold. Marble, like the hotel. Like the place where you made them bleed in public. Camille said, they don't forget humiliation. And they don't forgive witnesses. Over the next 48 hours, Project Echo became a bunker. Federal agents flooded the underground complex, firewalls thickened, and Naomi refused to leave. She studied the traces herself, eyes sharp from sleeplessness. The broker had made it personal. So now she would too. Camille stood beside her, watching her build a plan that looked half madness, half genius. You're thinking of going after him. Naomi didn't look up. No, I'm thinking of dragging him into daylight. She tapped the screen, lines of code connecting the broker's aliases, offshore accounts, shell corporations. He built his empire on invisibility. I'm going to burn it in public. Camille hesitated. You'll be bait again. Naomi met her gaze. I already am. At 200 hours, Naomi opened a secure feed, one that reached every journalist, whistleblower, and watchdog channel she'd once trusted. Her message was simple. They tried to kill my children. They silenced journalists. They own governments. I'm done hiding. If they want me, come find me, at the place they started this war. Empire Tower, 8 p.m. tomorrow. Camille's face went pale when she read it. You just invited the entire underworld to dinner. Naomi replied quietly, good, let's see who shows up hungry. The next night, Empire Tower stood shrouded in mist. Police barriers encircled the block. Drones hovered above like mechanical vultures. Inside, every floor was a fortress of sensors and countermeasures. Naomi stood in the lobby where it all began, the marble now patched but still scarred. The fountain had been rebuilt, the same place Victor had fallen. She wore no armor this time. Just a black blazer, hair tied back, expression carved from calm defiance. Camille's voice crackled in her earpiece. We've got signals, encrypted chatter coming from 3 blocks away. Multiple vehicles inbound. Naomi, you don't have to do this. Naomi adjusted the mic. Yes, I do. You can't dismantle a ghost from behind a desk. She glanced up at the camera lens overhead and whispered, come out, coward. The lobby lights flickered once. Then from the glass doors, a shadow appeared, tall, deliberate, moving with the confidence of someone who already owned the world. The broker, he wasn't what Naomi expected. No scars, no darkness, just refinement, charcoal suit, silver hair, an expression that belonged on magazine covers, not wanted lists. Miss Reed, he said, voice smooth as silk. You made quite the spectacle. Naomi's hand hovered near the transmitter on her belt, broadcasting everything live to Camille's control room. You sent killers after a janitor. You blew up my home. You think you get to walk away with words, The broker smiled faintly. I didn't come to walk away. I came to offer you something better. Naomi's brow furrowed. What could you possibly offer me? He stepped closer, unhurried. The truth, Camille's voice whispered urgently in Naomi's ear. Don't listen to him. He manipulates with data, not bullets. But Naomi didn't move. The broker's eyes gleamed. You think you were the first they silenced, the first invisible hand that tried to rise. No, Miss Reed, you were one of us before you forgot who we serve. Naomi's pulse stuttered. What the hell are you talking about? Ask your old commanding officer, he said smoothly. The one who died in that training accident, Marcus. Naomi froze. The world tilted, reality fracturing for a moment between memory and horror. The broker smiled. You see, even ghosts can cast shadows. Before Naomi could respond, Camille's voice cut through, sharp and terrified. Naomi Vouv, thermal spike now. The explosion came from above, the entire atrium roof shattering into cascading glass. Naomi dove behind the fountain as fire rained from the ceiling. The broker vanished into the smoke like a phantom retreating to the dark. When the fire alarm screamed to life, Naomi staggered to her feet, blood on her temple, shards in her hair. She looked up through the collapsing skylight, and for an instant she saw him standing on the edge of the roof, framed by flame and rain. Then he was gone. Camille's voice broke through static. Naomi, are you alive? Naomi coughed through the dust. Yeah, but it's not over. She glanced around the burning lobby, the place where everything had started, now crumbling again. Her reflection caught in a broken pane of glass, the ghost in the glass, staring back. And for the first time she understood, the broker wasn't trying to kill her, he was trying to recruit her. As sirens wailed outside, Naomi pulled herself upright and whispered, almost to the mirror itself, you want me in your network? Fine, I'll tear it down from inside. She turned toward the doors, smoke rising behind her, determination hardening in her eyes. Over the following weeks, Project Echo systematically dismantled the shadow network. Using evidence recovered from encrypted drives and cooperating witnesses, they traced the web back through corporate shells and political fixers. International raids brought down key operatives. Asset freezes crippled their financial infrastructure. Resignations cascaded through halls of power, but the broker himself remained elusive, a ghost who'd learned to survive by never being fully visible. Naomi testified before congressional committees, her words carrying weight that couldn't be dismissed or spun. She became a symbol not just of heroism, but of accountability, proof that the invisible could become undeniable. The Invisible Hands Fund launched to national attention, providing legal aid and education to service workers who witnessed crimes but feared retaliation. Thousands came forward with their own stories, the movement grew. And through it all Naomi remained grounded, a mother, a survivor, a woman who'd refused to stay silent. She stood at her apartment window one evening, city lights shimmering through rain, her children asleep in the next room. The coin was warm in her pocket. Marcus's memory was close. The war wasn't over. The broker was still out there, somewhere in the shadows, but for tonight, truth had won a battle. And Naomi Reed, former soldier, former janitor, forever faithful, was ready for whatever came next.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.